International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, Algeria has reiterated her condemnation of the unilateral measure taken by the Israeli occupation, warning that Israel's actions risk sparking new tensions in the Horn of Africa. Algeria and the International Organization for Migration have signed a convention intended to accommodate illegal migrants registered under the Voluntary Return and Reintegration Assistance Program to their countries of origin. A new report by the UN High Commissioner Office stated that discrimination and segregation by the Zionist entity against Palestinians in the West Bank have intensified to the point of resembling a system of apartheid. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Slimani. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has received here in Algiers the Ambassador of the United States of America to Algeria, Ms. Elizabeth Moore-Obin, who praised the relations uniting the two countries, affirming that they are strong, growing, and founded on respect and friendship. In a statement to the press following the meeting granted to her by President Tebboune, Ms. Obin highlighted that Algeria-US relations are based on shared values with cooperation across economic, security, cultural and energy sectors, and grounded in a long history including the 1795 Treaty of Peace and Amity.
The bilateral relationship between Algeria and the United States is deep, and it's strong, and it's growing. It's built on a foundation of shared values and goals, of respect and friendship. Our cooperation spans from economic to security matters, from cultural and educational exchange to agricultural collaboration. We collaborate in the energy sector and develop our security cooperation capacities to promote regional stability and to fight terrorism. We have such a long and rich history on which to build. In 1795, our two countries signed the Treaty of Peace and Amity, in which we reciprocally agreed to treat each other with honor and respect. A few months ago, we celebrated the 230th anniversary of that document's signing.
Ms. Obin expressed gratitude to President Tebboune for the honor of serving as U.S. ambassador and described her experience working with him and the Algerian government as edifying and fruitful. She praised Algeria's culture and the generosity of its people, recalled the U.S.-Algeria shared history, including the recognition of Algeria's independence in 1962 and Algeria's mediation in the 1981 Tehran hostage crisis, and emphasized the continued commitment to strengthen cooperation and make both countries safer, stronger, and more prosperous. Prime Minister Sifir Gharieb has chaired a government meeting to examine a draft executive decree defining the terms and conditions for apprentices' access to housing and heard two reports on the progress of additional programs for the benefit of 4 provinces and on the annual report on major risks for 2024. He also announced the decision of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, regarding importing 1 million sheep. Now, the Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has participated via video conference in a ministerial meeting of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union, devoted mainly to the situation in Somalia. More with Masoud Sharfi.
The meeting was devoted to the recent developments witnessed by the Federal Republic of Somalia, notably the recognition of Somaliland region by the Israeli occupation. In his address on the occasion, Mr. Attaf reiterated Algeria's condemnation of the unilateral measure taken by the Israeli occupation and reaffirmed Algeria's solidarity with Somalia in safeguarding its sovereignty and unity, warning that Israel's actions risk sparking new tensions in the Horn of Africa.
Let me start by reiterating Algeria's strong condemnation of the recent unilateral recognition of the so-called state of Somaliland by the Israeli occupation authorities. In the same spirit, I would like to reaffirm Algeria's unwavering solidarity with the Federal Republic of Somalia in all its efforts aimed at preserving its sovereignty, national unity, and territorial integrity. In this regard, we should all be mindful of the fact that after having spread instability, tragedy, and chaos in the Middle East through an unending series of military aggressions in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, and in Iran, the Israeli occupying power is now seeking to create a new source of tension and conflict in the Horn of Africa.
Mr. Attaf stressed that Israel's unilateral action is a serious concern regionally and internationally, violating core principles of the UN Charter.
The matter before us today is indeed of profound concern, not only for the Federal Republic of Somalia, but also for the Horn of Africa, for the African continent as a whole, as well as for the international community at large. It is finally a matter of international concern, as the Israeli unilateral action represents a blatant violation of the core principles upon which the contemporary international order is founded, and which are enshrined in the United Nations Charter.
The Minister of State insisted that the recent developments require a collective commitment to strengthen African unity against attempts to destabilize states and undermine their sovereignty, while also defending the fundamental principles of the African and United Nations systems. In the same regard, the Peace and Security Council (PSC) of the African Union called on the Zionist entity to immediately revoke its recognition of the so-called Republic of Somaliland. In a statement published on its website following a ministerial meeting held, the AUPSC strongly condemned the move, urging the occupation to reverse its decision, with several countries and organizations backing the call, reaffirming their support for Somalia's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Somalia has condemned the visit of the so-called foreign minister of the Zionist entity to the city of Hargeisa, considering this act as a blatant violation of the country's sovereignty, political unity, and territorial integrity, and an unacceptable interference in the internal affairs of a United Nations member state. In a statement chaired by or carried by the Somali news agency, the ministry affirmed that the city is an integral part of Somalia, declaring any unauthorized presence or activity there illegal. The Somali government called on the Zionist entity to immediately cease all actions that undermine Somalia's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity, and to fully comply with international law. The Secretary General of the Arab League, Ahmed Abul Ghait, condemned the visit as a failed attempt to advance Zionist recognition of the northwestern Somali region's secession, reiterating the League's rejection of any dealings with the secessionist authorities and warning that such actions violate Somalia's sovereignty and threaten regional peace and stability. Algeria and the International Organization for Migration have signed a convention on the operation of the Dar el Baida Airport Hotel in Algiers, intended to accommodate illegal migrants registered under the Voluntary Return and Reintegration Assistance Program to their countries of origin. The signing ceremony was chaired by the Interior Minister, Mr. Said Sayoud, and the Director General of the IOM, Ms. Amy Pope, as well as other officials. In a statement to the press, Mr. Sayoud stated, Algeria has mobilized all resources to manage irregular migrants and will continue cooperating regionally and internationally to address the issue, stressing the need to address the issue in countries of origin.
Algeria has mobilized all its capabilities, including the recruitment of security institutions and coast guards, in addition to other material resources, to take care of irregular migrants, whether in the west or east of the country, as well as through centers dedicated to irregular migrants in the border areas in the far south. I would like to say that we welcome the efforts undertaken by the Algerian authorities in this regard, and we will continue to work with international organizations, neighboring countries, and also the countries on the southern shore of the European continent to address this phenomenon and eliminate it, hopefully.
For her part, Ms. Amy Pope hailed Algeria's responsible and humanitarian efforts in managing the issue, thanking Algeria for supporting migrant accommodation before their return.
We are strengthening the sustainable management of the Arbery Acquisition Center within the framework of the Voluntary Return and Reintegration Program. The IOM expresses its deep gratitude for the support provided by the Algerian government. Through OPLA, we are providing the necessary infrastructure to establish a center dedicated to accommodating migrants before their voluntary return to their country of origin.
That was the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, Ms. Amy Pope. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. This is the English service. The United Nations has expressed serious concern about the continuing suffering of the Sudanese civilians amid escalating violence, particularly in the Darfur and Kordofan regions. More with Mas'ud Sharfi.
UN spokesman Stéphane Dujarric cited that the daily press briefing that the International Organization for Migration announced that nearly 65,000 civilians have fled the Kordofan region in southern Sudan over the past 3 months due to growing insecurity and clashes between the Rapid Support paramilitary forces and the Sudanese army.
We are seeing escalating violence, especially across the Kordofan region, and that continues to put civilians at extreme risk and drive new waves of displacement of people who have often already been displaced numerous times. South Kordofan state displacement has increased sharply in recent days. The International Organization for Migration estimates that between December 31st and January 4th, violence drove nearly 1,000 people to flee the Khoz locality in Kadugli town. Another 2,000 people were uprooted from Umdam Haj Ahmed locality, also in North Kordofan state. In total, between October 25th and December 30th, some 65,000 individuals were displaced from multiple locations across the Kordofan region. Once again, we reiterate our urgent call for an immediate cessation of hostilities and the protection of civilians. We also reiterate the need for rapid, safe, and sustained humanitarian access so aid can reach those in need.
The conflict in Sudan has claimed tens of thousands of lives, uprooted millions of people, and caused what the UN describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Various mediation attempts to end the fighting have failed.
Still with our African news, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has sounded the alarm over the rise in violence in Ituri province in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is severely disrupting relief operations in the region. Mr. Sharfi has more details in this report.
The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric reported that Biole and its surrounding have faced hostilities since early December, leaving at least 25 civilians dead and over 40 injured, and noted that insecurity has cut off aid to more than 87,000 displaced people facing critical shortages of food, healthcare and drinking water, while stressing that no humanitarian organization has operated in the area for over a month and reminding all parties of their obligations under international law to protect civilians and ensure safe, unimpeded humanitarian access. In this connection, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, reported that since December 5th, the massive influx of over 100,000 Congolese refugees and returning Burundians into Burundi has placed severe strains on health services and caused refugee camps in the eastern part of the country, particularly in Busuma, where a single mobile clinic handles 1,500 to 2,000 consultations daily, to become overcrowded. The camp hosting more than 67,000 people, mostly women and children, faces severe shortages in medical capacity, water, shelter and food, while a cholera outbreak puts refugees, particularly children, pregnant women and the elderly, at high risk of disease, malnutrition and hypothermia.
Now, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights stated today that discrimination and segregation, practiced by the Zionist entity against Palestinians in the West Bank have intensified to the point of resembling a system of apartheid. In a new report, the agency noted that systematic discrimination in all occupied Palestinian territories has worsened significantly in recent years. High Commissioner Volker Turk denounced the progressive suffocation of the rights of Palestinians in the West Bank, where access to water, education, health, mobility, and economic activities is strictly controlled by discriminatory laws and practices. He stressed that this is the first time a UN High Commissioner has used the term apartheid to describe this situation. The report also warns of increased violence by Israeli settlers, often with the consent or participation of the security forces, as well as land confiscations and deprivation of resources affecting the Palestinian population. Israel has occupied the West Bank since 1967, and more than 500,000 Israeli settlers currently live in settlements considered illegal under international law. And now moving to, at the same time, the European Union called on Israel to allow international NGOs access to facilitate the delivery of vital humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza, warning that without their presence it would not be possible to respond to the magnitude of the crisis. European officials warned of the rapid deterioration of the humanitarian situation exacerbated by winter, lack of shelter, the collapse of the health system, and the interruption of education. Now back to sports. The Algerian national football team qualified for the quarter-finals of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations after defeating the Democratic Republic of the Congo 1-0 after extra time, following a draw score in the first half in a round of 16 match held on yesterday evening. The only goal of the match came in the 118th minute from Adel Boulbina from Algeria. The victory marks Algeria's fourth consecutive win after triumphs over Sudan, Burkina Faso, and Equatorial Guinea in the group stage E. In the quarterfinals scheduled for Saturday, January the 10th, the Algerian team will face Nigeria, who advanced on Monday at the expense of Mozambique. This is Radio Algeria International. We're coming live to you from the capital, Algiers. Stay tuned.